Welcome back to the channel. Let's get after it.
This device right here has sent me down the deepest rabbit hole, and that's because this is a source of free energy that has a very mysterious history and could be linked to UFOs.
But for several years now, a small group of scientists here has been investigating a strange new space-age metal, a nickel-titanium alloy called Nightl.
In cold water, Nightl turns soft. Bend it and it stays bent, but in hot water it springs back with forces as high as 55 tons a square inch. No one knows quite why this happens. Several years ago, McDonnell Douglas began experimenting with Nightl in the form of springs. At room temperature, the Nightl wire springs bend easily, but in warm water they spring back, thus forcing the wheel around. Even stranger, Nightl wires get stronger the more they're used. They develop a double memory. They not only contract in the warm water, but they begin to stretch of their own accord in the cool water. Nightl can be trained.
And then there's this document that was written from the Battelle Memorial Institute to the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio in 1949. And of course, the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is known for allegedly storing the crashed UFO that happened in Roswell in 1947, which was just 2 years before this contract was written. And in this document, they're talking about the different alloys that they're testing, and they're giving a progress report on those tests. And at this time, Nightl went by a different name. And a lot of the serious UFO researchers believe that the Battelle Memorial Institute was the organization that was given the contract to examine and test all the metals that were retrieved from the Roswell crash. And one more interesting thing about Battelle is that they are the same organization that invented coating and metals that were used on spy planes that were then later used on the U-2 and the SR-71.
I did a little digging on this too, and it seems that the issue with the Nightl is that it works great whenever you're using it for small scale projects, but it doesn't scale up into large projects very well.
In the 1970s, the Judd family, Ornell and her boys at the time, are hanging out on the Judd family property. This green van just pulls up to their property. This is Kanab, Utah, and they're kind of like on the outskirts of Kanab. The Judds are there sitting on their property, and by their recounting, this green van, so this is by Ornell's direct accounting, there's a video of her saying this. Out of the van emerged these large Spanish-looking gentlemen, and Ornell was frightened by this. These people come out, and the kind of the guy that was driving introduces himself to Ornell as Raymond Dillman, and he asks her a really interesting question. Ma'am, do you have any hieroglyphics on your property? And she says, yeah, there's tons of them. He said, do you have something that looks like this? And it's kind of a drawing of 3 animal hieroglyphics, below each of which is like a circle. Her and her boys, Brent and Judd, are like, oh yeah, here's where it is. He's like looking next for this like bullseye looking thing. It's like a 9 spiral thing, and they find that hieroglyphic too. Things are getting kind of weird. This guy knows these hieroglyphics. He's looking for very specific things, and he's finding on the Judd property. So he says to her, Montezuma's treasure is buried on your property. So he kind of goes on to explain. So he says, first he introduces himself, and I'm Raymond Dillman. I come from Native American and Aztec ancestry. He further explains that the way that he had found this property and these hieroglyphics was through something called the Peralta stone. Peralta stones were these tablets that were found buried kind of in a roadside in Arizona. He believed that it was the map to Montezuma's treasure, and that he had deciphered it. But they go get an excavator, and they start digging. They figure right below that bullseye that he had identified. So first, as they're digging, there's a thing that like rolls off the ledge as the excavator, and it falls down, cracks. He thought this like might be part of the treasure, but it's actually just like an old clay pot that had a bunch of turquoise, Native American turquoise beads in it.
I looked up the value of like turquoise beads. Obviously, it depends on the quality.
Yeah.
But over $100 per carat. A dime sized of turquoise is worth $500.
So they're excavating. That's not the only thing they find. It gets mysterious. They then uncover stone coverings, basically, to an entrance, like flat stone coverings under a bunch of sand. And they pull back the stone, and guess what they find? Dead bodies.
Are you serious?
Dead bodies. They find a big stone that looks a ton like a sacrificial altar.
It has like grooves, and also the bones were cannibalized.
That's right. So they had these bones carbon dated. So was that those bones were from 2000 BC, which is actually way before the time of Montezuma.
So definitely not Montezuma's treasure. Looks more like they found an ancient graveyard or an ancient murder site that was covered up. I think that's one of the most fascinating things about ancient cultures is whenever you get into like the human sacrifice stuff, and that they thought that they had to do that in order for some of them to survive, they had to sacrifice others. That's pretty fascinating. It's a hard stretch for me to get my mind to that place where I would think that I would view the world that way, but seems like that was the majority of people back in the day. Pretty fascinating.
On Melwater's property in the Monastash Ridge west of Ellensburg, Washington, there's a hole in the ground that looks like a well, but it's not a well. Like the owners of the property before him, Mel used the hole as a trash dump. His neighbors used it too. Garbage, broken appliances, old tires, everything went into the hole. After a while, Mel started to wonder, why doesn't it fill up? And then he started to notice other strange things about the hole. His dogs wouldn't go near it. It caused his radio to pick up strange signals, and it didn't seem to have a bottom. Mel's curiosity became an obsession. Well, let's see if we can get to the bottom of Mels Hole. Mels Hole is a round pit 9 feet 9 inches in diameter. There's a stone retaining wall built around it that goes down about 15 feet. After that, the hole extends down into darkness. Well, not only did Mel Waters and his wife dump everything in the hole, but so did his neighbors. And this has been going on for a long time. For years before Mel even moved in. Mel's neighbors said they couldn't remember a time when the hole wasn't there. So why can't you hear objects hitting the bottom? Why can't you hear your own echo? Mel set out to determine exactly how far down this hole goes. An avid fisherman, Mel had spools of fishing line on hand. So he attached a 1-pound weight to the line and sent it down the hole. It went 4,500 feet, the full length of the reel, and didn't hit bottom. He reeled the line up, attached a roll of lifesavers, and sent it all the way down again. Mel wanted to see if there was water at the bottom, and if there was, the lifesavers would come up dissolved, but they came up dry. And Mel had more spools of fishing line, each one 5,000 feet. He attached another spool, now down almost 10,000 feet, and still no bottom. Spool after spool of fishing line went down the hole. He could not reach the bottom. By the time Mel ran out of line, he was 80,000 feet down, over 15 miles, and still no bottom. While experimenting, Mel noticed that his dogs wouldn't come anywhere near the hole. Even when forced, the dogs would dig their feet in. There were no animals of any kind near the hole. No wildlife, no insects. Birds even flew around it. And since the hole was known to his neighbors, Mel asked around if anyone noticed their dogs feeling uneasy by the hole. And they all said yes. Then one of his neighbors said, "Speaking of dogs, not too long ago his dog died, so he threw its body into the hole. A few days later, that dog came back."
All I can picture is that this is some sort of a portal into like an alien land, and here we are as humans just throwing our garbage into it, and it's just popping up in the middle of like this really fancy high-tech city or something. There's just like washing machines, old tires and stuff just appearing out of nowhere. Hey, if you're enjoying this video, I make a new one just like it every single day. It would be awesome if you'd hit that subscribe button and come back to join me tomorrow.
After Mel's neighbor threw his dead dog into the hole,
Why? Just why?
I don't know.
You can't bury it.
I really don't know.
Sometimes humans are very disappointing.
They certainly can be. Anyway, a couple of days after disposing of his dog's body down the hole, he saw it running through a wooded area near the property. Now, he knew it was his dog because it was wearing the same collar, but for some reason, the dog didn't come when he called. And the dog acted like he didn't know his owner at all.
Ooh, maybe it's a version of his dog from another dimension.
Well, that's definitely a theory. And as the weird stories piled up and the fishing line kept going down, Mel was at a loss. He was
Out of his depth?
right. Mel needed help figuring out exactly what this hole was. And in 1997, there's only one place to discuss the strange and mysterious and be taken seriously. Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell.
From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening and or good morning, wherever you may be across this great land of ours.
Coast to Coast was on hundreds of stations around the world and had 10 million listeners. If anyone could help Mel, it was Art Bell and his audience. Mel sent Art a message on February 21st, 1997. Art called him, and Mels Hole became known to the world. Over the course of several shows, Mel Waters would reveal more and more details about the mysterious hole. The good news is Mel was getting really good advice from people all around the world, like use a laser to measure or use radar to check the distance. The bad news is now millions of people knew about this hole, and from clues given by Mel on the radio, you can get a pretty good idea of where it was. The day after the first broadcast, Mel was returning to his property, but the entrance was blocked.
The government.
Yep. The U.S. military was now aware of the hole, and they wanted it, all to themselves.
Of course, the U.S. government took possession of the hole. We can't have anything cool without the government coming and taking it. If I ever find a hole on my property that can't be filled up, no one's going to find out about it. Definitely not going to tell the government about it. I thought this was interesting. Curious to know whatever happened to this hole. I did a little digging and couldn't find a whole heck of a lot on it. I'd be interested to know if they ever filled this thing in, if it opened back up, if it's even accessible where someone could look at it now.
This is a guy who probably looked an alien straight in the eyes. Police officer. What happened was he was pursuing a speeder, April 24th, 1964, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And he's chasing after this car. It was convertible. He sees something flickering in the sky off to his right. So he terminates the chase and he drives up this hill. He gets up the hill and he looks down in this little arroyo and he sees this object sitting on the ground with a couple of like these small little children-like people. He's got the window down. He's got his arm out the window and he's looking out the window with the window down. What am I looking at? He's like, did a car crash and there's a couple of kids down there? So he's trying to call out like, hey, you okay? Is everything okay down there? At which point one of them looked him right in the eyes. He didn't talk about any level of communication, if he had any communication, whether he did or didn't, I don't know. But he decides he's going to get a closer look at this thing. And in the process of doing so, he had to lose sight of the object for a moment. So he drives around and now he's about 50 feet away from this thing and he gets out of his car, and as he's getting out of the car to get a closer look, to walk towards this thing, he takes about 2 or 3 steps. He hears a clunk, and he used to be in the Army and he said it sounded like that of a hatch of a tank. He didn't see them get in it. He didn't see the door close. That's what he heard. He got about 3 or 4 strides towards this egg-shaped object that had a red symbol on the side of it. When the first military officer arrived on the scene from the Army, his name was Richard T. Holder, and Richard Holder asked him if he wouldn't mind to say that the symbol was something different than what it was, and that the original symbol was never released to the general public. We found it in the archives in Dr. Heineck's own handwriting, and we had a description of it from the initial leaks that came out from the reporters that were on scene before the military got there, and it was an inverted V with 3 lines.
Like a pyramid.
I've decided I'm going to start throwing in some of these first-hand accounts of alien abductions and sightings and whatnot. For one thing, they're very fascinating to listen to hear all the details and everything that they go through. And for another, these people usually destroy their entire lives coming out with this information. I would say it's pretty rare that someone comes out claiming to be abducted by aliens and then the rest of their life is better past that point. It's usually very much the opposite. So I find it fascinating for those reasons. I'm going to start including some of that stuff. You guys let me know down in the comments if you're interested in that stuff, because I certainly am.
A conspiracy theorist breaks down some strange Batman post from actor Matthew Perry before his passing.
Something is not adding up with Matthew Perry's death. As you all know, Matthew Perry was found drowned in his jacuzzi at his home in Los Angeles. Days leading up to his death, he was posting cryptic messages on his Instagram in reference to Batman. Starting on October 17th, Matthew Perry posted this video of a cinema room. Every wall was covered with Batman. And he points up to the corner of the room, and there's a bat signal up there. The next post, he posts a bat out in the water where it says, "Sleep well, everybody. I've got the city tonight. Matman." So he's referring to himself as Matman, playing on the pun of Batman. He has something that says, "Batman plays pickleball." It was announced that he played a 2-hour pickleball match right before he died. Now, there's one post that's very bizarre where it's somebody, it's not Matthew Perry's hand. I don't believe it's Matthew Perry's hand, but it's somebody's hand dropping 3 cranberries on a table. And Matthew Perry says, "This is what I've had to eat today. I'm Matman." People are speculating that this had something to do with the Cranberries lead singer, Dolores O'Riordan, as she was found dead from drowning as well. And then he goes on to post a picture of a jack-o'-lantern with the Batman signal carved into it saying, "Do you know what I mean?" And after this, he posts a video of the moon. And all it says is, "Do you understand what I'm trying to tell you? I'm Matman." And in his 83rd and final post, it shows Matthew Perry in the jacuzzi where he drowned. He says, "Oh, so warm water swirling around makes you feel good? I'm Matman." In this photo, you can clearly see that he's highlighting the moon, which is behind him as well. And that is another thing, is Matthew Perry died on a full moon with a partial eclipse. He died on the hunter's moon. Some are saying that this was a full moon sacrifice. So what does this mean? Is he trying to tell us something? Batman, Matman? What's very interesting is in the Batman TV series, Season 1, Episode 33, Fine Finney Friends, it is revealed that Bruce Wayne's great-grandfather was the founder of the secret society Skull and Bones at Yale.
That is Bruce Wayne's grandfather, Mrs. Cooper?
His great-grandfather.
I understand he was tapped for Skull and Bones.
Tapped for it? Sir, he founded Skull and Bones.
Not to mention that it was episode 33, which is heavily involved with Freemasonry. Now, obviously, this is very tragic. I don't want to make light of this, but there's some things that just don't add up surrounding Matthew Perry's death. Matthew Perry has had a history. It's leading a lot of people to think that he was relapsing. But some are speculating that he was telling everybody a message, or he was trying to tell everybody a message because of all of these Batman/Matman scenarios.
I put this in here because I made a comment about it the other day about his cryptic posts and stuff right before his passing. I got several comments on that video of people asking what I was referring to. So this is a pretty good breakdown here of exactly what his last few social media posts were, how odd they seem. It seems like there's definitely something to it. I can't put my finger on a pattern there. There's a lot of people looking into it. It does seem suspicious. It seems like there was some foul play or something. I'm not convinced that there was. It just looks very fishy.
So he gives me the first target, and it was a pyramid, really huge pyramid. In comparison to the big pyramid in Egypt, you could put 3 of them inside this puppy in it. And it's got big rooms in it, which construction-wise, they must know something we don't know, because a pyramidal shape is very difficult to build inside.
Monitor. All right now, using the information in the envelope I've provided, exclusively focusing your attention now, focus on 40.89 degrees north, 9.55 degrees west.
And the first set of coordinates was 44.89 degrees, 9.55 degrees west.
Subject. I want to say it looks like I don't know. It sort of looks, I kind of got an oblique view of a pyramid form. It's very high. It's kind of sitting in a large depressed area.
So now we've got pyramids on Earth, supposed pyramids on the moon, and supposed pyramids on Mars. If there's any truth to that at all whatsoever, we need to start researching what these pyramids are for. There needs to be around-the-clock teams studying the pyramids in Egypt and trying to figure out what the heck they were built for, what their purpose is, whether or not they're still active or can still be used for that purpose, and whether or not we can access the technology that was used to create them.
I can't imagine, after now doing DMT twice, I can't imagine someone becoming like addicted to it.
Oh, I wouldn't know about that. I know a guy who was a tattoo artist that was doing DMT every fucking day, multiple times a day. And then finally the entities had to sit him down and go, hey, motherfucker,
Chill.
Stop. Like, you're going to lose your grip on this world.
Wow.
Yeah, they literally told him to stop doing it, he said. They know your bullshit. They know all of your nonsense. They know all of your thoughts. They know, I mean, whatever the fuck they are, whether they're a part of your consciousness or whether these are intelligent entities in another dimension that you're interacting with.
See, that is what I've been questioning since doing this. So I was told by a friend who's done DMT a lot that after you do DMT, pay attention to the real world, and if you believe that the elves are real beings that are independent of something created in your own brain due to the DMT, they'll like send you a sign, right? And I was like, again, crackhead shit. No, I'm not gonna meet the elves in real life, right?
Right.
So one of the things in my first trip that they kept telling me was, this is not the end. This is not the end. They kept telling me that because I think I was asking them, like, is this what happens when you die? Like, what is this? Directly after the trip, we go to a restaurant and there's a huge sign that just says, this is not the end on the thing. And I'm like, whoa, what?
I had some people get upset about me commenting the other day that I'm convinced that psychedelics played a part in our brain expansion. I don't know why. It's just my theory, but I'm still convinced. And I think DMT also played a hand in it. I think anything that is mind expanding like that can rewire your synapses and make you essentially a different person, just the experience of something like that. I can take a substance, and whenever I come out of the other side of it, I'll be a completely changed person. That tells me we're expanding the human psyche whenever we take those substances, especially since most people seem to change for the good. Lower depression, lower anxiety, more empathy for others.
In 1902, another prospector by the name of Jake Johnson. So Jake Johnson is prospecting in the Badlands of St. George, Utah, and he breaks his leg. He gets found by this Paiute man. Jake Johnson offers the Paiute man all of his gear if the Paiute man agrees to help him. In the course of doing so, Jake Johnson builds a friendship with this Paiute man and his wife. The Paiute man was out hunting one night, and a mountain lion attacked the dwelling. Jake Johnson steps in, helps fend off the mountain lion, saves his life, and they become super tight friends. And so this guy starts telling Jake Johnson the stories of his Paiute people. So he's like, Jake, many years ago, our people saw a band of a bunch of other Indian people, not our tribe, carrying these giant cases that were covered in animal skins. And they went to a cave, moved these cases into the cave, and then killed all the slaves. And what they told us was, we've been instructed to come here and guard and protect this treasure until a time that our king calls us to bring it back, calls us to return, right? And they're like, if you help us, you will, when our king comes back, you will be visited with great prosperity. If you don't help us, he'll kill you all. So the Paiutes are like, all right, cool. The half of the soldiers that remained started kind of intermingling with the Paiute tribe. The story goes that there's a bunch of Paiute descendants who are actually part Aztec. Jake's like, oh, okay, I don't believe you. But if that is true, like, I'm like kind of this guy that's like good enough friends with this Paiute guy who's telling me about his treasure. So Jake Johnson hatches a plan. He's like, all right, this Paiute man, trust me, he's told me about this treasure. He told me where it is. Can you show me where this treasure is? And the guy's like, let me think about it. So he takes a couple days to think about it. And then he's like, okay, here's the deal, Jake. If both of us are still alive in 1 year, I will show you where the treasure is. So that's what Jake Johnson and his Paiute man do. And so Jake kind of huddles around the area for a year, and also writes to his older brother, and he's like, hey, I got this thing going down with this Paiute guy. Brother shows up to the meetup, and the Paiute guy shows up, not part of the deal. And Jake's like, dude, he's in it, I'm sorry, but here's the deal. We will only take as much as we can carry. So finally the Paiute guy's like, okay. The terms of the deal were, though, however, we're going to blindfold you. Lead him by horseback. It's like multiple days.
It took days, yeah.
So they knew they were in a canyon.
They were planning to come back.
Yep.
They were trying to keep track of the way to.
Finally get to the place, uncover the blindfold. They're in the cavern. Well, it's exactly what the Paiute guy described. They take as much as they can carry. They lead him out, and they go and sell their gold in St. George. They each make 15 grand out of those days dollars. Safe to say, like, multiple $100,000.
They bought ranches with this money.
That's right. They bought about like the finest gear in Salt Lake because like we're going back for this thing. Couldn't find it. Eventually, they both bought ranches in southern Utah with that money, and they published their story. I think it was in the Salt Lake Mining Gazette or something like that.
Then it got picked up by like National Magazine. People started connecting their story to James White, so it's generally accepted that that these caves are the same one.
So people are like, Montezuma's treasure is in the Grand Canyon. It starts drawing a ton of interest for people to go kind of start thinking about exploring the Grand Canyon.
This is a very, very famous story. I've heard this probably 7 or 8 times referenced. This is the first time I've seen a well put together video like this talking about it. You know, there are great swaths of the Grand Canyon that are just blocked off that you can't go into, and they say it's for people's safety. Man, there's no telling what's hid down there. And you got to think, before we even found this place, there were millions of people populating these lands. The odds are there's been full civilizations that have camped down there for thousands of years. There's probably more artifacts to dig up and more ancient history to find in the Grand Canyon than there is anywhere else in this land, in this country.
All right, y'all. This is an update pertaining to what happened to our boy, RCB Cell, and his sighting of what he believed was a giant in Oregon. For those of you just finding out about what happened, this gentleman claimed in a video to have seen a massive door open on a cliffside or hillside in Oregon off Quartzville Lane. It was a massive boulder-like door that he thought he saw slide open and closed, and then thought he saw an entity peeking out a peephole in said door. When he posted the video on TikTok, it quickly went viral, garnering up to 3 million views. It gained notoriety quick, just like our friend here, Andrew Dawson. So, nevertheless, people in the comments were like, go back. They wanted to see and get a closer look at what it was. So he did. Well, it wasn't long before he said he was being followed by white unmarked vehicles, and it wasn't just in that instance. They started following him everywhere he went. After this, nobody heard how to hear of him for a couple of days, until recently he started posting again. But if you notice something, he deleted every video that had anything to do with the giant, almost as if he was told he better do it or else. And he did the right thing and got rid of them. To me, this adds validity to his claim. If he was chasing clout, why would he delete the videos? The only way he would delete them is if he was told that he had to. One of them had 3 million views. I mean, why go through such an elaborate hoax just to delete all the content that you gained and notoriety you gained from it? He was being intimidated, which tells me there's more to this structure than they want anybody to know. So after this, my curiosity got the best of me, and I took to Google Earth to check out the lay of the land, to see what maybe these old structures of rock or these old hillsides with all this stone were. Anymore, I don't believe that when this occurs, they're necessarily all natural structures. I believe it's possible that they are completely dilapidated ancient structures. Now, this one particularly isn't exactly where the sighting was. It's down the road. But if you take a close look at this shape here, what do you have? You can tell the outline. Just take a look at the outline. It looks like it could have been possibly a pyramid. Here it is again with me outlining it. It has the 4 sides that come to a peak, and maybe possibly some sort of entrance over there. You never know. It's hard to tell. But if it is an ancient structure, it's pretty old due to the obvious foliage taking it over completely. For example, the ancient Aztecs' Pyramid of the Sun in Mexico. You would have thought that was just a hill until they finally dug it up. And look what they uncovered. It's absolutely mind-boggling. It's truly amazing how a pyramid can be taken over by foliage, and you would never know it was even there. And I believe there's many more of these around the world. For example, the Bosnian pyramids, completely overgrown, and they're still trying to convince mainstream archaeologists that they are pyramids. They're in denial. Now back to our Oregon location. Here is where the sighting was. This is the structure nearby it. Here is said structure without the lines drawn. You can clearly see possibly 4-sided pyramidal-like structure. And you can see here, if you look closely, there's a lot going on in this area. It's actually an area very well known for Bigfoot sightings and the like. It's a very frequented Bigfoot sighting area. It's also completely wooded. State parks surrounding it. So a perfect place for Bigfoots and or giants to live. What makes it even more appealing is that right across the road, there's water. So there's a source for water nearby. Between that and the wildlife, it would easily be able to sustain in this location and remain very well hidden. I also noticed while looking at the hill on Google Earth that he spotted the alleged giant on this. Now, it could be nothing, but could it be something? Well, it kind of looks like possibly a bipedal humanoid type creature standing there. Who knows? I know when you actually take the time to measure him, he does turn out to be right around 15 to 20 feet tall, if it is a living entity.
My honest opinion on this guy's reaching so hard to try to find something. I think he just wants to see something in the area. Those don't look like pyramids at all to me. They look like hills. They don't even have 4 sides. They have more than 4 sides. Man, I almost feel bad making y'all sit through that. Especially considering that's the end of the video. We're going to call it quits there and pick it back up tomorrow. I hope you guys enjoyed these clips. Keep letting me know down in the comments section how I'm doing, what you want to see, what you want to see me cover, what you're getting tired of seeing, that sort of thing. You guys have been so good to me in the comment section, constantly giving me advice and keeping me motivated to keep going. Y'all make it very easy to keep posting every day. I'll just say it like that. I look forward so much to hearing what you guys have to say. It makes me, that's the first thing I think of whenever I get out of bed is I'm going to go get a video done so that I can get it posted and get some conversation going. Y'all are my window to the outside world right now. I'm kind of trapped in the house awaiting surgery, so I appreciate everything you guys have done for me. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Make sure you come back and join me tomorrow. I'll be here with another video just like I am every day. Have a great, safe day. I'll see you tomorrow.